Most everyone has heard the story. It is a simple tale, one that has been told for over a century. A cow belonging to a woman named Catherine O'Leary kicked over a lantern in a small barn. This single, clumsy act supposedly started one of the most devastating fires in American history. The story is easy to remember. It gives a face and a name to a massive disaster. It makes a complex event feel simple. But like many stories that are passed down through generations, this one is not quite what it seems. It is a piece of folklore, a myth that has overshadowed the real, more complicated truth for far too long. The tale of Mrs. O'Leary's cow was born from a need to place blame. It was a time of great confusion and immense loss. People wanted an answer, a simple reason for why their world had turned to ash. A reporter named Michael Ahern, working for the Chicago Republican, later admitted that he invented the story. He thought it would make for more colorful copy. The city was full of anti-immigrant sentiment at the time, and Mrs. O'Leary, an Irish Catholic immigrant, was an easy target. The story stuck, and for decades, she and her family lived under the shadow of this unfair accusation. It wasn't until 1997 that the Chicago City Council officially exonerated her and her cow. The truth is, we will likely never know for certain what caused the spark that ignited the O'Leary barn. Some historians suggest that a group of men were gambling in the hayloft and may have accidentally knocked over a lantern. Another theory points to a neighbor, Daniel Pegleg Sullivan, who was the first to report the fire. He claimed to see the flames from his home, but his account had inconsistencies that made some suspicious. The cause could have even been something as simple as a stray spark from a chimney landing on the dry hay. What we do know for sure is that the conditions in Chicago that night were perfect for a catastrophe. Blaming a single cow and its owner distracts from the real issues that led to the city's destruction. The focus on this simple myth hides the larger story of a city built too quickly, with too much wood. It ignores the dry weather, the strong winds, and the exhausted fire department. The story of the cow is a convenient fiction, but the reality of the Great Chicago Fire is a much more important lesson. It is a story about urban planning, human error, and the incredible power of nature. Understanding this reality is the first step in truly appreciating what happened to Chicago in 1871. On the evening of October 8, 1871, Chicago was a city waiting for a disaster. It had been an unusually hot and dry summer, with very little rain for weeks. The city itself was a tinderbox. Most of its buildings, sidewalks, and even some of its roads were made of wood. This made construction fast and cheap, allowing Chicago to grow at a remarkable pace. But this rapid growth came at a high price. The city was a sprawling collection of wooden structures, packed closely together. A strong wind was blowing from the southwest that night, ready to fan any small spark into an uncontrollable inferno. The fire started around 9 o'clock in the evening in the barn behind the O'Leary cottage on DeKoven Street. The initial response from the fire department was slow and confused. A watchman in the courthouse tower mistakenly directed the first firefighters to a location nearly a mile away from the actual blaze. This crucial delay gave the fire time to grow. Fueled by the wind and the abundance of dry wood, the flames leaped from the barn to neighboring sheds and houses. It quickly became a moving wall of fire, consuming everything in its path as it headed toward the heart of the city. The fire was unlike anything the city had ever seen. It was so hot that it created its own weather system, including terrifying fire whirls or fire tornadoes that could pick up burning debris and hurl it across the city. The fire easily jumped the south branch of the Chicago River, a natural barrier that many thought would contain it. It swept through the downtown business district, turning majestic stone and iron buildings into hollowed-out shells. The so-called fireproof structures melted in the intense heat, which reached an estimated 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The city's waterworks building was destroyed, leaving firefighters with no water to fight the blaze. For nearly 30 hours, the fire raged. It burned a path roughly 4 miles long and 1 mile wide, destroying over 3 square miles of the city. By the time it finally burned itself out, aided by a welcome rain on the evening of October 9th, the devastation was almost total. The fire had claimed the lives of an estimated 300 people and left more than 100,000 residents homeless. The commercial core of one of America's fastest-growing cities had been reduced to smoking rubble. The true story of the fire wasn't about a cow, but about a city's vulnerability and the terrifying force of nature. In the immediate aftermath of the fire, the scene in Chicago was one of utter desolation. The once bustling downtown was a wasteland of blackened ruins and twisted metal. Smoke hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of the catastrophe. Thousands of people were left with nothing but the clothes on their backs, wandering the streets in shock and despair. They faced a future that was uncertain and frightening. The world watched, wondering if this great Midwestern metropolis could ever recover from such a crushing blow. It seemed an impossible task to rebuild from such complete and total destruction. Yet almost immediately, the spirit of Chicago began to shine through the gloom. The city's leaders and its citizens refused to be defeated. Before the rubble had even cooled, plans for a new and better city were taking shape. Donations and aid poured in from across the country and around the world. But it was the city's own "I will" spirit that truly drove the recovery. Merchants set up temporary shops on the sidewalks. Architects and engineers saw a blank slate, an opportunity to create a modern city that was safer and more magnificent than the one that had been lost. The rebuilding of Chicago was astonishingly fast. The fire had cleared the way for a new kind of urban planning. New building codes were established, mandating the use of fire-resistant materials like brick, stone, and steel. This led to a construction boom that attracted some of the most talented architects in the world. They came to Chicago to experiment with new designs and technologies, giving birth to the first skyscrapers and creating the foundation for what would become the renowned Chicago School of Architecture. The city became a laboratory for the modern city. Within a few years, a new Chicago rose from the ashes. It was a city of taller, stronger, and more beautiful buildings. The fire, as devastating as it was, ultimately acted as a catalyst for innovation and progress. It forced Chicago to reinvent itself, transforming it from a city of wood into a city of steel and stone. This incredible comeback story cemented Chicago's reputation as a resilient and forward-thinking American city. The disaster had not broken Chicago. In many ways, it had made it stronger and more iconic than ever before. Beyond the statistics of destruction and the grand narrative of rebuilding, the true heart of the Great Chicago Fire lies in the individual stories of its survivors. These are the tales of ordinary people who faced an extraordinary crisis with courage and resilience. Consider the story of Joseph E. Chamberlain, a reporter for the Chicago Evening Post. As the flames approached his office, he continued to write his account of the disaster. He and his colleagues worked until the building itself caught fire, then fled with their pages, determined to tell the world what was happening to their beloved city. Another powerful story is that of Horatio Spafford, a successful lawyer who lost much of his real estate portfolio in the fire. Just 2 years later, he suffered an even greater tragedy when his 4 daughters died in a shipwreck. In the midst of his profound grief, he penned the words to the famous hymn, "It is well with my soul," a testament to faith and resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. His story reminds us that the fire's impact went far beyond financial ruin, testing the deepest reserves of human strength and spirit in ways we can only imagine. Everyday citizens also became heroes. Countless individuals risked their lives to save family, friends, and even strangers. People opened their homes on the outskirts of the city to those who were displaced, offering food, shelter, and comfort. Men and women formed bucket brigades in desperate, though often futile, attempts to save their neighborhoods. The publisher of the Chicago Tribune, Joseph Medill, saw his newspaper plant burn to the ground. Within 2 days he had found a new printing press and published an edition with the headline, "Cheer Up," urging citizens not to despair, but to rebuild. These stories of bravery and determination are the fire's most important legacy. They teach us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can endure and triumph. The fire destroyed buildings, but it could not destroy the community's will to survive and thrive. The lessons from Chicago in 1871 are not just about fire safety or urban planning. They are about the power of hope, the importance of community, and the incredible resilience that people can show when they come together to face a common challenge. The city was rebuilt not just with brick and steel, but with courage and an unbreakable spirit.